This video is part 1 of a 3-part series. Today we're going to be focusing on A Tale of Three Lives. If you're familiar with my channel, you've probably heard of at least one of my series. Almost all of the reoccurring webkins you'll see on my channel are part of my long-running storyline, which I've dubbed the Axolotl universe, thanks to an inside joke with my friends. Recently, I've been working on taking those webkins characters and adding them to my toy house. And the more I thought about the old stories, I started to wonder, what would it be like if I made them now? So obviously, Snazzy and I binge-watched everything I created since 2018. I chose not to include Hunted in this rewrite series since I didn't think it could handle it. It's so old and so nostalgic to me, I just don't feel comfortable touching it. So, let's get started with A Tale of Three Lives. I had planned to explain what happened in the original, and then what I would change after that. But I really just wanted to gush about their motivation, so instead this is me tossing the old one out the window and just rambling about how it would work now. Content warning. This story contains mentions of violence, death, specifically murder, child abandonment, and the character struggling with their trauma. Nothing is graphic, but I do think it's important to warn you up front. Final disclaimer, my OCs, along with myself, are very queer. If hearing about queer stories and romances is going to be a serious problem with you, then my channel is not the place for you. You're introduced to Marble and Piper first. They're twin sisters, and they've spent most of their young lives listening to their parents argue. As they listen to the sound of their dad walking out, Marble asks Piper to promise never to fall in love, and Piper agrees. Then you're introduced to Jay. He had plans to hang out with his friends today, but at the last minute they cancelled. His parents were out and he didn't have any siblings to play with, so he decided to spend the day inside instead. When a loud bang coming from his backyard grabs his attention, he rushes outside to find a stranger pointing a gun at his parents. His parents freak out when they spot him. Their attacker doesn't handle it well either, and before Jay realizes what's happening, everyone around him is dead. At some point, a seal, who later introduced herself as Cynthia, shows up. She's obviously distressed over what happened. She approaches Jay, shocked to find him still alive. She tells him she's here to help, and to wait here for her to return. When she returns, she's with a floating see-through rhino, and tells Jay that he should leave before whoever sent their attacker comes back. Jay does what he's told, and he follows the rhino. Next, you skip ahead to Marble and Piper in high school. The two are as close as ever, but recently Piper's attention has been drawn to the new kid at school. You find out that the new kid is Jay, and that Piper has a hardcore crush on him. Marble can't understand what her sister sees in him. Piper and Jay start dating, and Piper starts spending more and more time with Jay. Instead of talking to her sister about her jealousy, Marble lashes out and tries to find any dirt on Jay to break them up. She finds out that he's been homeless since he was 13, but when she tells Piper, it only makes Piper mad at Marble. Time passes, and Marble can feel her sister pulling away. Piper has big plans for her life, and it doesn't seem like Marble's a part of them anymore. Then Marble finds out that Piper has plans to run away with Jay. She yells at Piper for breaking her promise to never fall in love, and Piper calls Marble naive for believing she ever would. Marble storms off, hurt by her sister's words. Unknown to the sisters, Jay had also been having a horrible day. As the years passed, the rhino still looked out for him, but he refused to share any personal information with Jay. Jay wants to start his life over with Piper, and he's really beginning to distrust the rhino. The next time he appears, Jay corners him, hoping he'll finally share something with Jay. But Jay's words hurt the rhino, and he only doubles down. Right as Jay is at his maddest, Marble walks by. In her anger, she lost track of where she was heading, and the sight of the rhino caused her to stop dead in her tracks. She'd been acutely aware of magic her whole life, especially given the fact that she had powers of her own, but she had never seen anything like that. The rhino looks towards Marble, and Jay follows his gaze, causing Jay's anger to shift towards Marble. He's so fed up with her messing with his relationship with Piper. They start arguing, and the rhino takes his opportunity to leave. Jay gets frustrated and pushes Marble, knocking her to the ground. As soon as she hits the pavement, he realizes what he did and starts apologizing for it, but she's completely fed up at this point. Her necklace, which dampens her powers, had snapped off, and all she wanted in that moment was for Jay to get as far away from her and her sisters as possible. Her main powers are healing focused, but she also inherited her father's fire magic. She manages not to attack Jay. Instead, she yells at him, telling him to leave her and her sisters alone. He panics and agrees. Then she grabs her necklace and storms off. A few days pass, and Piper is getting really worried. She hasn't heard from Jay, and she doesn't know what to do. Marble didn't tell her sister what happened between Jay and her, and she didn't honestly believe Jay would listen. After a week goes by and there's still no word from Jay, Piper breaks down. Piper admits to Marble that she's pregnant. Marble had been feeling slightly guilty for chasing Jay away, but that made her regret everything. She promises Piper that no matter what happens with Jay, she'll always be there for her. Meanwhile, Jay feels like his whole life just fell apart. He'd spent the last 6 years afraid that he'd end up like his parents, and Marble's threat made that fear all too real. But at the same time, he still blames himself for messing up his relationship with Piper. He's also still homeless and struggling to keep a job. His anger with himself causes him to lash out more, and he ends up with an arrest for trespassing and property damage. Thankfully, by some miracle, he only ends up with community service and a requirement to attend an anger-focused group therapy. At first, Jay's convinced he's perfectly fine. But after the first session, he realizes he actually kind of needs this. He reaches out to the group therapist, Jack, and opens up about struggling with a job and a place to live. Jack does his best to help Jay out, and together they find an individual therapist more suited toward Jay's needs. Jay's mental health begins to improve, and eventually he stops attending group. Jack reaches out to Jay, wanting to make sure he was doing alright and still had a stable place to live. He lets Jack know that he's doing much better. Jay lists a few nice things going on in his life to Jack, and the two realize they have a lot in common, and they start to bond. Over time, Jack starts inviting Jay to hang out with him and his friends, and Jay becomes a part of his friend group. Jay begins to realize he's developed quite the crush on Jack. He decides, for the sake of transparency, to admit his feelings to Jack, in hopes that if he acknowledges them, they'll go away. But afterwards, they seem to drift apart. Jay begins to worry that he might have just ruined the one good friendship he's had, when Jack reaches back out to Jay. He admits that he shares Jay's feelings, but that he wanted to talk to his girlfriend about it first. He asks Jay if he'd be interested in an open relationship, and after some thought, Jay agrees. So Jack and Jay start dating. Meanwhile, Marble has been helping Piper raise her daughter, Marie. She moved in with Piper and helped her sister through college. As much as Marble regrets her actions, she's really glad that it brought her close to her sister again. Everything seems to be going really well for our protagonists, until Jay reaches out to Piper. By now, it's close to 3 years since Jay left. He's become a lot more secure in his emotions, and he wants to apologize to Piper. Piper is shocked to hear from Jay again, and is honestly pretty mad at him. She'd been doing just fine without him, and is still upset that he left without a word. But ultimately, she decides to hear him out for Marie's sake. They agree to meet somewhere neutral to say their piece. When Jay learns about Marie, his guilt triples. He starts apologizing for everything, but shortly realizes that Piper has no idea what he's talking about. He explains what happened between him and Marble, and how it led to him leaving. She snaps at him, saying that he shouldn't have listened to her. He only apologizes again, and she feels bad for lashing out. He tells her about his life since he left, and manages to convince Piper to let him schedule time to see Marie. Then Piper returns home. She blames them both for what happened, but Marble has lived with her for the last 3 years and hasn't said a single thing, which makes her very angry. Piper confronts Marble, and the two get into a fight, leading to Piper kicking Marble out. A long year passes, and Piper is starting to feel rather lonely. She's still upset with Marble, but she's begun to miss sharing the small parts of her life with her. After much internal debate, she reaches out to her. Marble is ecstatic to hear from Piper again. They slowly start to repair their relationship, and eventually Marble comes back to live with Piper. Then you skip ahead another 2 years. After really getting to know one another, Jay and Samara start to develop romantic feelings for each other. Eventually Jay, Jack, and Samara all get married. They combine their last names and become the Ebonies. Jay's partners have been watching him with Marie, and they've been considering having kids of their own. When on their annual camping trip, they discover Chip. The lost 4-year-old can't remember anything about his life, and despite their efforts, the Ebonies couldn't find anyone who knew him. They decide to have him stay with them until they find his parents. But after months with no word, they adopt him themselves. The trio really enjoys parenting Chip, and starts to long for a Baker family, leading to the arrival of the Ebony twins, Connor and Dusk. You skip ahead a few more years one last time. Marble meets Sundance, and the two start dating. When they become close, Sundance comes out to her as asexual and biromantic. Marble was too caught up in the drama with her sisters to put much thought into her own identity, and it never occurred to her that asexual didn't mean aromantic. She starts to explore her own identity with the help of Sundance. She learns that she's heterosexual and aromantic. But she really had grown close to Sundance, and didn't want their relationship to end, even if they didn't feel the same towards each other. They talk it out, and form a more queer platonic relationship that works best for each of them. And then the story ends. That was a lot. I changed a whole bunch, and I totally understand if you weren't able to keep up with the differences. So I made a handy little list of everything that I removed from the original. Marble being alloromantic, Jay's siblings, Tawny and Tyler, Jay's powers, Jay killing his parents' attacker, Marble knowing that Piper was pregnant before chasing Jay away, the poodle that Jay killed, Roy being invisible to everyone but Jay, and honestly everything after the 26-minute mark in the original video. Yeah. Thank you all so much for staying this long. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this and aren't super sad that I totally destroyed the original Tale of Three Lives. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!